Hello and welcome to the channel. Today's frightening bear attack takes us to a place called Skilak Lake, located on the Kenai Peninsula in southern Alaska. In between Hidden Creek and Skilak Lake, there is a gravel campground that can be accessed by trail, boat or plane that allows visitors to rest on the banks. The area around the creek is a broad valley, covered in dense alder brush and spruce stands, making it some sort of impenetrable visual screen that shelters bears and allows them to stalk their prey. On Friday, June 11th, 2021, a couple who we will refer to as Jim and Samantha had a romantic camping trip planned together. Jim and Samantha drove to the parking lot at the Upper Skilak Lake campground and packed their supplies into their kayaks. They brought with them a first aid kit, bear spray, and an air horn. The couple then packed their gear in the storage hatch of their kayaks as they paddled along the waters of Skilak Lake. The amazing scenery mesmerized them instantly. The 6-mile journey to Hidden Creek took a few hours in the afternoon, and upon arrival they were eager to get ashore to set up camp. After arriving at Hidden Creek, the couple beached their kayaks and began unloading their gear. The campers had plenty of time to finish setting up their camp just before starting dinner so that they could enjoy the enchanting aura of the lake. As the shadows started to fill the sky, Jim and Samantha decided to call it a night, crawling into their sleeping bags until silence arrived. As they slept, an enormous brown bear happened to be searching for something to eat, and this aggressive one in particular was starving. At around midnight, Jim was shaken awake by Samantha. She woke him up because she heard something moving just outside of their tent. As Jim came to his senses, he rambled around their tent, searching for the bear spray they brought with them. They decided they should have a look outside the tent door and see what it was that was creeping around them. As soon as they peeked out of a crack in the tent flap, they could see a huge round bear head come into view, and it was getting bigger by the second. They then soon realized that the bear was charging towards them, and they had nowhere to go. As they retreated from the open flap, they could feel the weight of the bear slam into them, pressing them into the cool ground beneath the tent fabric. The tent material acted as a sort of trap around them and held them in place for the bear as it took turns attacking Jim, then Samantha, and then Jim again. Given it was dark and the campers were covered in tent fabric, the bear had no idea what part of its victims it was clawing or biting. The brown bear was attacking them for only about a few seconds, but it seemed like forever. By the time the bear left their tent, Jim had severe wounds on his legs and arms, with some of the wounds going so deep into his muscle tissue that his legs were not completely functional. Samantha was somehow less battered, but had several gashes on her legs and arms. As the campers were still terrified within their collapsed tent, they knew they would have to get help and risk running into the angry bear again. For all they knew, the enormous bear may have laid down for a rest and could be watching them at the very exact moment. Determined that they had no other choice, they grabbed a few supplies and started making their way back to their kayaks. They walked along the trail, while constantly keeping a lookout for the bear. At the kayaks, Jim began searching for the first aid kit, specifically looking for something to stop the bleeding. While keeping an eye out for the bear, Jim and Samantha boarded their kayaks and pushed away from the shore. After a few hours, they returned to the Skilak Lake campground and began yelling for help. They were met with a couple of responders who helped them out of the kayaks. Jim's injuries were so severe that he could not stand up and had to be piggybacked. An ambulance was dispatched to the campground, while the campers tried to keep Jim warm. After a few minutes, the ambulance arrived, followed by the medevac helicopter. Jim was loaded aboard and flown to the nearest hospital, while Samantha made the trip in the ambulance with less life-threatening injuries. The next day, one of Jim's friends returned with biologists to determine the reason of the attack. They reported that there were no bears anywhere near the attack site, and after analyzing all the evidence, they concluded that the attack was unprovoked. With this bear attack in mind, I have a few questions for you. Do you think the bear was surprised by the campers after stumbling into the tent? Do you think you could have survived this attack? And how would you go about preventing this type of thing from happening? Let us know in the comments section below, and I will meet you there. And remember, always be careful out there in bear country.